there are two things which I wanted to tell you, which is sort of one is there are few, sometimes the reality, it hits you harder than fiction, right? And there was one such piece which unfortunately we had to sort of edit out, but it was fantastic. The You see, Ahuja sir, before he was leaving, there was there's a scene where Alka ma'am is doing the fitting of the sweater, and I remember when I was shooting it, I was telling, like I was saying, I always tell people what to feel at that moment. I was telling both of them, keep yourselves busy with nervous energy, as if you're trying not to um, state the obvious that I'm going to miss you, right? So it's that nervous energy borderlining on irritation is what Amrita was working towards in that moment. Excuse me. And Ahuja sir had forgotten, because it was so sudden, had forgotten to go to the bank to take out some money. And that is the how beautifully real these people are, you know. So, and उनको थोड़ा सा पैसा चाहिए था, so he had told Alka ma'am के यार Alka तू bank से take some money out, and there were people going to Kargil every day, so Rao is coming there, तो उसके हाथ, please send it. And when we had shot this scene, and then we had shot that bit where Ahuja sir is fixed, doing the last check on the jet before takeoff, and that time Rao sir comes and gives him the envelope where there is a letter and some cash. And of course, Ahuja sir reads the letter, and because he's about to take off, he keeps it in his overall, and he flies in his last flight. When Ahuja sir is sent back in that small coffin, that envelope is sent back as well. And Baldy, as in Baldy sir, the real Baldy sir, who was always very close, even today, very close to Alka ma'am and Ankur, their son. So Baldy had that envelope, and when Jimmy sir, which is Tony sir, gets agitated, what am I going to do with this coffin and stuff like that, and Baldy says, "Sir, I will look into it." So, and we have shot this scene where Baldy and Goofy, they go to look for a coffin at this old man who makes coffins in Srinagar. And out there, they go through the thing, and of course, we see the scale of the loss that Indian Army was going through with the amount of sort of tons and tons of coffin being made. And when they're about to buy the coffin, they realize they're not carrying cash. So the only cash they have is Ahuja sir's cash. So, and this is what they actually did. They actually bought the coffin using that cash. Now, I won't even, calling that lyrical, poetic is not the right word. I don't even know what to call this. And those are the things which, of course, it came out in research, and we had actually shot this, and Mihir had done the scene beautifully. And but of course, there are various other factors of edit, energy, narrative. We couldn't fit that in. But I think these were the moments which made this far bigger than just cinema. The other thing which you mentioned sometime back, Dhali, Abhay. You see, Abhay's character was one of the toughest character for me to get Abhay to portray, because he's really good. He's like a sponge. He gets it very beautifully, as in Abhay the actor. And I wanted him to be really good at what he does at a borderlining on being obnoxious. His in the first few bits, his bravado and his overconfidence, but you can never question his ability. But at the same time, there is a wee bit of vulnerability, because you mentioned vulnerability. Because to me, every hero that I've loved in writing or in cinema are heroes who've shown me their vulnerability. Because otherwise, to me, they're not heroes anymore, right? So when Dhali goes through that moment of totally being at loss and not being able to deal with his grief, not knowing what to do at that moment, there's a scene, to me, actually, it's one of my favoriteest scenes in the series, is where he comes to Chaucer at night and says, "Sir, can I fly tomorrow?" And Chaucer doesn't know how to say no. And we were shooting it. It was the night shoot, and we were shooting it at about 5ish in the morning. And Setu was getting really agitated because in about 30 minutes the sun would be out and we won't be able to shoot anymore. I had about maximum 45 minutes to finish the scene. And I was thinking how to get them to feel that moment. And I was telling Chaucer and Dhali both that, okay, just forget about Air Force. I want you to be father and son. And imagine that you are this boy who is going through recovery, and you're dying to get that one fix. And uh, and you ask your father, that dad, give me that one fix, that one dose. I'm dying. I'm going through. I cannot deal with this. It's hurting me, the withdrawal. And as a father, you're conflicted, because you know that if you give that whatever, one dose of whatever little drug that you have, is will ease the pain of your son. But at the same time, you're conflicted that you cannot give it to him. You should not be giving it to him. How do you deal with this conflict, right? And they actually had 3 sentences in that, but they've made me feel that moment so beautifully. I mean, if you get time, just watch that scene again. They made me feel that moment so beautifully. That analogy. I was talking to both the actors after the shoot got over. Uh, they were still in that zone. It worked. It worked beautifully, right? And the last little anecdote which I want to leave you with is a very interesting anecdote, actually. You see, when we were shooting in the mountains, we had a lot of little mishaps here and there, because of the weather, so when we were shooting up at 16,000 feet, our lighting truck got stuck, because the diesel froze, and it was because it was black ice and there was snow, and the truck was stuck. It took us a few days to send a towing van to get the truck down. It had all our lights. So in between, we had to finish shooting Ahuja sir's uh, the execution scene, and for that, and that we were shooting a little lower in altitude, and Siddharth had to go back, and therefore we couldn't delay that shoot any further. And I wanted that to have a certain kind of real meets surreal light, because that, if you notice, that is probably the only scene where it borderlines sort of slightly surreal, because it has a slight bit of last fading evening light which is coming in from one corner. And that was inspired by a book which I had read in my childhood. uh, so Rabindranath Tagore had a nephew whose name was Avanindra Thakur, who used to write children's book. He was an amazing painter as well, and he had written this book which I had read it at least 100 times. All of us had read it, called Rajkahini, which were stories of Rajasthan and the prince and the princess, and a lot of stories of victory, valor. As Bengali kids used to love reading about, kings and queens of Rajasthan. Don't ask me why, but so there was a story of this lady who gives birth to a, say a boy and a girl, twins, and she uh, she wakes up in the morning and she's lying on the floor, and she feels a tug, and those twins are there lying on her pallu, and she sees the fading light on the girl's forehead, and she realizes that this girl won't live for very long, right? And that bit of the concept of fading light, now that book was written, there was no illustration in the book, but that fading light had stayed with me as a fading light which tells you that the time has come. And I really wanted Ahuja sir's light to be the fading light in that. But we did not have any light. So, and we had to shoot that day. So we did the most ridiculous thing. So if you ever watch that scene again, you'll realize we actually used a small torch and used a magic arm in front of the lens and put the torch onto the lens on that right corner. And it was freezing. And this guy who was holding the torch, his hand was shaking. But we had to make sure it was held correctly because it kept falling down. But we actually shot the entire scene in a span. We had to shoot it in magic hour, of course, uh, uh, in about 30 minutes, holding a little torch onto the lens, and that was the only bit of light that saved us and created the fading light that I wanted. So yeah, so that's the little anecdote.